Hey, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. This is a special episode of Yappin with the Stars. If you follow me on my YouTube or you're part of the Patreon, you'll know that I have a weekly show called Yappin with the Stars that drops every Wednesday. But this past Wednesday, I was not able to tape the show. And a number of things have been going on. So I'm going to get to that later on as we get into the show. But for today, it's the new moon in Virgo. And we've already had a new moon in Virgo last month. So it's August 25th, I believe, to be exact, 24th, 25th. And that was at 0 degrees. And now we are having a new moon in Virgo once again at 29 degrees. And so this is a literal end of a beginning. And as we're also seeing the moon literally oppose the sun, oppose Saturn and Neptune. So there's also a tense new moon. It's a new moon that is cracking some things open. And as we are in this Virgo and Pisces axis, this is about faith. Who do you put your faith in and why, right? And we are seeing a lot of that in the public. So it's a time of faith, and because we are going to also be in some squares, we're going to be in some tensions, because just as we have this new moon coming up, we're also having a Mars-Pluto square, and we also got Venus squaring Uranus. So personal is political. The personal is part of the structural, because until we take this shit personally, we are going to be continually reproducing the same structures that are subjugating that personhood to begin with. So let's get into it this week, y'all, all right? This is a special edition of my show, Yappin with the Stars. New Moon in Virgo Part 2, what I'm calling Spiritual Warfare is Here. So who and what do you put your faith into, all right? So welcome back to Yappin with the Stars, the show where I talk about life and spirit with the help of the planets, stars, and zodiacs, and a bit of common sense thrown in there as well. I am your host and guide, Nicole Rouse, a storyteller who comes from a line of storytellers who weave and tell stories in many different ways. And here I work with astrology and ethnography to explore the stories of what it means for us to be human. Because right now, the present is up for grabs. So who is leading on the stories that will bring us into our futures? Now, every Wednesday, we check into the chaos we call society and ask two main questions. What's the cosmos showing us this week? And what are we being called to move, build, burn, create, and or reflect upon? But again, this is a special edition. So today we're checking in on Sunday, the beginning of the week, the day in which the sun does shine, right? It's ruled by the sun. But here, we're also being asked to examine the kind of ways that we engage with and think about that sun, think about the self. So let's get into it, y'all, okay? Now, before we get into the actual astrology, I want to make a couple of announcements before I forget, okay? So I'm actually doing some pop-ups in Chicago next month. And so if you've ever wanted to get a reading with me in person, it's going to be mini readings. They're about 20 minutes apiece. And I'm going to be focusing on relationships, because both of the events I'll be at are going to be queer, either speed dating events or parties that go on in the city. So the first one is going to be October 16th. I'll be at Nobody's Darling for a 40 plus singles mixer. It's a queer mixer, so queerness abounds, but if you're 40 plus, come on out. I will be doing 20-minute readings there. You can sign up online ahead of time. They're $30 for 20 minutes. And then I'll be on the 19th at Jackhammer for the Funk Stick Party, which is a monthly queer-focused party that also is very open for folks to be able to explore their own sensuality through dance and through play. So if you're interested in getting a reading with me, come out to those two pop-up events. They're on my website. And again, you can sign up ahead of time if you would like. All right. And I've also added a tip jar, y'all. I'm going to say this. Let's just get into the astrology. This is going to be a little bit all over the place. I really am going to be yapping with y'all today because it's been fucked up. Okay. It has been a fucked up time, just, from society to personally. And there's a way that I'm really understanding what it means to come into a new beginning right now. Once you have allowed things to crumble, to break. And what's broken in me is my relationship to the public. And this goes directly into the kind of new moon in Virgo energy at 29 degrees. So today we're having the new moon, like I'm saying, at 29 degrees, which means the sun and moon are together. We call that a conjunction. Now, as they are conjuncting, coming together in Virgo, they're coming into Virgo at 29, which means the very end of that zodiac degrees when we look at zodiacs from 0 to 30. And so at 29 degrees, this is an ending, but it's also at 29 degrees, a sense of urgency, right? There's a sense of needing to kind of do it so that you can actually believe it, right? And right now, the society is in this critical juncture of who and what do we believe in and why, right? Because Virgo ruled by Mercury. If you've joined me on the show for a while, or if you have taken any of my divination study sessions, classes in the Patreon, you know I talk about Virgo a lot because it is the way we communicate. It is ruled by Mercury, the smallest planet out there that is the planet of communication, how we communicate, transportation. It's also the crossroad. It is the crossroad of society. And we are at a crossroads right now at a critical juncture, 29 degrees, through its feminine earth side of Virgo. Because remember, every planet is ruled by two signs except for the sun and moon, and they kind of mirror each other as luminaries. So Mercury is ruled by Gemini, which is the mind, masculine, and then Virgo, feminine, earth. Not only is it ruled by Virgo, it's also considered to be exalted in Virgo, right? And so I say this all the time. If the planet itself fucks with Virgo 2 times over, so that not only is it comfortable in Virgo, but it also can feel as if it can exalt and really show out in Virgo, then we need to really think about the place of Virgo in our lives and how we engage with that side of Mercury. And since it is feminine side of it and the earth side of it, this is about your body. I will harp on this until the day I die. This is about the body right now, y'all, and how we come into the body as a site of release so that we can ground in some kind of goddamn sense. Because right now we're getting fed a bunch of nonsense. And so the South Node's in Virgo as well. So we got this new moon with a solar eclipse, which means that this is an eclipsing of power. There is going to be a lot of change of power. This is why back in the day, monarchs would fear eclipses, especially solar eclipses, because it usually indicated change in power. And if you're the one in power and you don't want to change, then you keep your ass inside and ensure that you understand what's going on social, politically, economically in your state. But when you don't, right, this is a time in which the reality of who's in power really becomes illuminated. It's really out there. So this is about faith. Do we believe what we are seeing, what we are experiencing, what we are feeling? Because it's about feelings. Virgo communicates via the body, which means the body communicates to us through what? Emotions. And again, babies are the perfect example of that. They feel. The first mind we have is the stomach, y'all. The first mind we have is the stomach. So how is your stomach feeling? What is your stomach trying to say to you? Do you understand its messages? And if you do, again, do you believe? Belief once again is coming onto the table. It's literally sitting at the table, trying to knock us in the head, saying what do we believe in and why? And I say that because remember, Virgo is the opposite of Pisces. So what is Pisces? Pisces is the deep water. It's the deep water. It's the mysteries we cannot know, y'all. It's where the dead reside, right? It's where the ancestors lie. It's also where our collective consciousness is, because that is our connection to the other side, to the things we cannot see but know, because there is a belief. We have to believe in things. This is the imagination. This is why Pisces rules creativity, rules the imagination. It is the ruler of Sagittarius and it's ruled by Jupiter, which is also ruled by Sagittarius. So what is Jupiter then? This ruling planet of Jupiter is the big daddy in the sky. It's the good time parent, but the good time parent that still wants you to learn your lesson. So Jupiter is about actual law and structure, because it is law and structure that comes through wisdom, right? Comes through the knowing, comes through the kind of teachings, and taking those teachings and those experiences that you put out, that you have, and transmuting that into a wisdom. So this is why I talk about Jupiter and Saturn being the parents of the zodiac for us. Jupiter being the father, Saturn being the mother, or the crone, right? And if you were in my divination session, we talked about that, I think last month, when I broke down Jupiter and Saturn and thinking them as the MC and DJ of our lives, right? If Saturn is the DJ and Jupiter is the MC, right? How do we construct this kind of melody, this playlist, this understanding of what we learn and do in our lives, right? Needs to then be transmuted and translated into a kind of way of being, the kind of way we understand time, how we then create traditions and boundaries. There's a relationship being had here, but it's out of balance. It's been out of balance for a very long time. Why? Because the patriarch took over. And this is where we see Saturn being made into Big Daddy in the sky, right? The taskmaster, seen as the embodiment of capitalism. Of course, that's how you reconstruct an old crone into embedding its will and need to a patriarchal society. You then erase the ways in which there was a balance between the masculine and feminine. And don't think about this in these strict gender roles, y'all. Think about this as actual energy that is always in a kind of fluid state. When we remove the fluidity of the parents and make everything masculine, what we get then is a kind of bastardization of what it means to be human. And we've been living in this kind of patriarchal imagination for a millennia. Because remember, a lot of the astrology that we engage with and learn from and work with, especially Hellenistic, is coming out of Greece and Rome, along with Babylon as well. You got the Babylonian and different kind of Arabic type of understandings of astrology, but a majority of the West coming out of Greek and Rome. So in order to understand those myths, you got to understand the society those myths are constructed through in order to maintain said society. And Greece and Rome were very heavily patriarchal societies, especially Rome, right? We are living in the imagination of Rome right now, right? And this is not conspiracy theory. This is what a lot of scholars have examined, right? Is the reproduction of social structures that then may get a new kind of facelift, but underlying ideologically, it's the same thing. And so when we're thinking about the present day and how we have these kind of really fucked up structures in the present moment where we are seeing a violent and a very forceful return by the US state to this supposed kind of past in which there was nothing but white patriarchal dominance right in your face once again, they are invoking this kind of myth. They are invoking this kind of belief that, this is a benevolent Christian nation that is just trying to maintain its Christianhood, right, by forced assimilation. That's exactly the tactics of the Romans. That's exactly the tactics of the colonial, right? You go in and you present this facade that you just want to be able to work with and kind of oversee, right, rule over a smaller population that you feel as if you can dominate. And you dominate through ideology. You dominate through taking somebody's gods, taking somebody's ancestors, taking somebody's myths, and replacing them with your own. Rome did this throughout the way it conquered. It would try to use negotiation. This is very much a Mars and Libra energy. Use negotiation. Use these tactics of, oh, just come in. We will essentially protect you. You just got to pay us X amount every year for tribute, and that X amount's going to ruin you. But also, you can keep your gods. But then once we come in and take your land and take your resources, we then tell you, oops, well, not your gods necessarily. We have a God that's kind of the same. So we're just going to replace that God of, say, land with our God of land, right? So it was always this bait and switch. It's a tactic. It's a tactic of a power structure that only knows consumption but does not know maintenance. Rome fell Rome really fell because it couldn't maintain. It kept expanding, it kept consuming, it kept taking, but then there's resources needed to maintain. It's always I liken this, y'all, to my damn mama. Roll with me here. Now I got my silent generation as parents, but I know a lot of people that got boomers as parents too. So old boomers and young silent generation. There is a way that my mom does not understand that shit needs to be looked after, right? Like you buy something and then there's maintenance, right? And it's weird because when I bought my first house 10 years ago, I was able to do that, which I was lucky to because I was living in a small town. Didn't cost a whole lot, honestly. So the mortgage ended up being just about as much, if not cheaper, than trying to rent a place. So looking at all these houses, though, that was fascinating to see because you could definitely tell who lived in the house when you were looking through and seeing the most random ass kind of add-ons to these old houses that didn't make any sense, but then there was no actual maintenance of the foundation of the house to begin with. And so shit just didn't work. And they wanted an exorbitant amount of price because they said, well, I put all this money into it. Like somebody put a fucking hot tub in their bedroom. Like, that is nothing but humidity and mold, and it's Wisconsin. Like, baby, what are you doing? But it's this kind of facade that you can add on, but you don't maintain, right? This is very much what a lot of these imperialist nations and colonial nations methodology is coming out of. They took from their own internal land. And so once you've raped from when you've literally consumed everything you can internally, you then put that externally. Why am I saying all this, y'all? There's there's a method to my madness right here. When we understand the imagination that we are living our realities through, then you have finally found your feet enough because you can face the crossroad, because Mercury is the crossroad, and ask, does this shit make sense? And if it doesn't, then why am I giving up my offering to nonsense? This is Virgo Pisces axis. Okay. The new moon is at a critical degree, like I keep saying, and this criticalness is we should be feeling. There's a palatability in the air. Since the last new moon, we are seeing what is required of us individually and collectively to move this conversation, to move this story, because the state is going to double down in its story. And its story is leading us what? Into that North Node in Pisces, into their collective imagination that's going to keep us subjugated. And I say that because you have Saturn retrograding in Pisces right now at 28 degrees, and Neptune is retrograding. It's not hit Pisces yet, but it's at 0 degrees in Aries. It's straddling the line between the deep waters and the shore, the land, the head. So right now, we're being asked, what do we believe in and why, y'all? Who do you believe in and why? What and who do you believe in? Because it's about the stories we tell. And it's about the myths we create that allow us to then have the confidence to create. And we are seeing what they are creating, y'all. They are creating a new Messiah. They are creating a new God. They are trying to spoon feed forcefully into the public, into the American public, this story that the only future we have is a white Christian nationalist one. And now they have their martyr because that Christian white guy, once you brought whiteness into it, always was bloodthirsty, but then it added on a spirit of consumption. So when you don't have an ability to know when you are satiated, when you are not in your body, so that your body is talking to you and redoing and helping you understand when enough is enough, it will never be enough. You will always consume. You will always take. And because you will just take and consume any and everything, you then will be the best vessel and weapon for the state because you will align with its complete nonsense at your own detriment. This is what we talked about in Ring Shout. So if y'all were joining me when we talked about Ring Shout last month about God, humans and monsters, right? This is a perfect example of Butch Clyde when he was feeding them white folks that meat that was alive, but he said they easily took it because they already had hate inside. So all they were doing was just feeding off what already was. It was nonsensical. And so that nonsensical hate is what allowed an illogic of white supremacy to maintain itself. And when we look at fiction, y'all, when we look at speculative fiction in particular in this moment, if we stop just taking it at a face value of, oh, they predicted this, so we're this is inevitability, and start using it as a kind of sacred text that is giving us insight into different possibilities. If we believe this reality and what can be possible from it, which is nothing more than destruction, and you can see it written down on the page of what that looks like, so then you also can feel that once you read something, you should have an emotional reaction, whatever that emotion is. It's supposed to be invoking something in and out of you. Well, then shit, that is it's us and the ancestors giving us different understandings of what is going on. So who and what do we believe and why? Right? Who and what do we believe and why? And so we're seeing public psychosis right now as well. Pisces North Node, Saturn and Neptune. So Neptune retrograding and Saturn retrograding are saying, okay, review. What's the review of ourselves, our head, and where our heads lie? And can we be grounded in our bodies so that when we have to go back into the milieu of the collective, of these kind of crazy making, right? Rhetorics that we are all being subjugated to. Do we have our feet so that we can navigate these choppy waters? Remember, I talked about this last week in the show, in which, and also in the last divination study session, we're talking about Pisces Virgo axis. And this idea of Pisces, because it is the deep waters, you have to be the grounding. You have to know where your feet are so that as the tides do shift, you are grounded in your body and your knowing, hence it being an axis of Virgo. Virgo Pisces is giving us an insight into how we navigate these waters that are going to be in change, in flux, in flow for the next few years, right? Good astrologers, and when I say good, I mean honest astrologers will have been very clear, right? I've been very clear. This shit is not going to end anytime soon. We are in massive change. All the outer planets have changed signs, and they're going to be in a grand trine and a conversation for the next 2 to 3 years minimum. Alongside these eclipse seasons, this is just the beginning. We got a massive stellium next year, I think in April in Aries. There's another one before then, I believe in Capricorn in January or February, right? And then in 2027, 2028, when the nodes change over to Aquarius and Leo, we are having a massive stellium in Aquarius during one of those eclipses. So we're getting a preview of the energy of change in a society that was already crumbling, but now the emperor does have no clothes because the foundations have been exposed, but exposed by the state itself. So as they went in and wreaked havoc to the structures of this society for the past 5 months, right, they have hit most of their targets. They laid this out in Project 2025. Folks didn't believe. Folks didn't believe. And I always ask the question, why? Because we had a full first Trump presidency in which he was figuring it out. He was trying to figure out how to go in there. He did anti-DEI then. I had to deal with that with my last job. I was working at Beloit. I was in charge of the TRIO programs. I had a Mellon grant as well that was doing decolonial work on campus. And then we had Charlottesville, right? Trump comes in, then we get Charlottesville, which was them white boys in polo shirts and khakis and them fucking tiki torches marching around talking about we won't be replaced. Baby, you're going to light yourself on fire, right? And from all of that kind of chaos and commotion, Trump was trying to pass executive orders saying that DEI was illegal and that you wouldn't be able to get federal funding for it, right? And the initial pushback was very strong because he didn't have the courts at the time fully. Right? He was figuring it out. University of Iowa kowtowed real quick, and I told folks then, believe these institutions that will bend the knee off the bat. Believe the institutions that bend the knee off the bat, y'all. So then after that, right, and at the same time, this is when Turning Point is also gaining momentum. And I hate, again, I've said it on my TikTok, I've said it here, I'm going to keep saying it. I hate these fucking debates because the minute you allow a methodology that has no grounding to sit at the table, especially in places that purport to be the intellectual and innovative centers of a nation, you have just undermined your own foundation, your own methodology, your own knowledge production system. It was faulty to begin with. And again, last episode, I talk about this in context of the O.J. Simpson case and the ways we saw the state not being able to live its own raps and understand its own science. And that was a big part of the acquittal because they told folks to believe in this science, this new kind of objective truth that they themselves could not enact. And so it's about power then, and who has the power and the resources to be able to enact those kind of methods, enact that scientific method that's supposed to be the absolute truth. But then you get someone like a Charlie Kirk who comes in, college dropout, gets money from a rich white man who wants to push conservative values. But here's the thing, when you try to use a young vessel to push your values, you do not actually control that vessel because that vessel will then start to feel itself. And that's what Charlie started to do over the years, feel himself and go off on his own kind of understanding of conservative values, right? But then he used an institution that he knew he could, higher ed. Higher ed, this is Virgo, analytics, right? The knowing, the facts, the data. And so right now, the South Node in Virgo is showing just how precarious all those facts and knowledge and data are and were, right? Because it couldn't even live its own raps. These institutions couldn't even live its own raps. Why? Because it was so committed to its neutrality in order to save its own ass. And if you've been on my Patreon for a while, the very first book we read in here, 2 years ago, it's still in there in the collections, Ebony and Ivy, the kind of history of the higher ed via enslavement, right? There is a strong connection, and always has been, between religion, education, the state, and slavery, right? This is racial capitalism. That is the logic that it was used. Institutions of higher ed were one of the ones that created the kind of logic systems that justified going in and dehumanizing people and maintaining it. There was always pushback, okay? There was always pushback, but the debates then did not lead to change. Action did. They were debating people's lives, and abolitionists were debating people's lives up in the Northeast, but in the damn South, they were actually putting some shit to practice in order to get folks free. Okay? People love to use these knowledge systems as a way to do an I gotcha, but when you only sit in the mind and you don't do anything in the body doesn't move, then you are complicit of the state. You have become the vessel of the state. And we are seeing this shit right now. So Virgo South Node, alongside this eclipse, is highlighting and eclipsing knowledge. So who do you believe in and why, y'all? And do you believe your body? Because right now, not only are we being fed this Christian white nationalist sentiment, it is invoking these kind of myths, these kind of stories that are slipping people into various understandings of reality that are not true. And this is namely with this idea of the rapture. Now, how many of y'all ever heard of the rapture? And please, if you want to engage, it's my first time doing a live, so I have the chat over here. If you want to engage, please go ahead and do so. But how many of y'all ever heard the rapture, right? Or the kind of this idea of the next coming of Christ, and people will just 144,000 will be elevated up out of the blue one day, and the rest of us who are left here on Earth I have to fend and contend with the idea that we weren't chosen to ascend to heaven, right? This is something that I grew up understanding, even though I grew up Catholic, and I didn't necessarily hear this at all in Catholic school. I heard it around a lot of my friends who were in the more kind of evangelical. I was just going to say, Aisha, I was just going to talk about the Left Behind movies, right? And so I really learned it because of them damn Left Behind series. So I read the books. Right. I read the books in high school because, again, I was in Catholic school. I was really heavy into myths and stories and mythologies. I really wanted to actually do folklore analysis and archaeology. So I was always a big dork. And so when the Left Behind series come out, I was fascinated, y'all. I was fascinated. At one point, I really wanted to study just biblical stories and myths because none of this shit made sense. So I think I read like the first like 6 or 7 of those books. They kept going. Right? It was a never-ending story. Like everyone's gone, but they still keep the goddamn story going. And I stopped reading them because they introduced a Black character in one of the books, and it was just so blatantly racist. Like I couldn't even it was like my stomach said, like I couldn't read them. So I put them down. Then they made them into movies, right? And I think I watched the first movie, maybe the first, I don't know. How many movies were there, y'all? Was there more than one? But I remember watching the first one, and it just looked so ridiculous. I was like, I'm gonna put this down, right? But them stories come round and round because that is the bread and butter. Yes, peek behind the blinders. That is kind of the peak kind of myth of a lot of these newer Christian denominations, the evangelicals, the Protestants, the even Jehovah's Witnesses, right? You have these kind of newer sects of Christianity that always are leading you into hell, right? In some way, shape, or form. You are never good enough in who you are, where you're enough in your body, right? It's never enough. So you're always waiting to die to be elevated and ascend into another realm. So I've always said, who the hell does that benefit and why? And what logical sense does that make? If we come down to this beautiful planet called Earth, and if we're only here to die, then what's the point of life? Like, it doesn't make any sense, y'all. It doesn't make any sense, right? And it's not even in the Bible. The rapture is not even in the Bible. But it is for them, right? It's about belief. It's about what you believe in. Even if it's not there, then you will move your logic and move your sight to something and somewhere else, right? And we're seeing that in the illogic of people doubling down and still saying, no, but it doesn't matter because I was taught this or I believe it. So my belief is even more than the actual mundane, the evidence. So this is where we have to believe folks, y'all. I do mean this. We have to believe folks because there's a lot of folks online who are skirting around a harsh reality that the public needs to take some responsibility for what's happening right now. And this to me is going to be the Pluto Mars square I'm going to get to in a minute. That's also part of this new moon conversation. Okay. Along with Venus and Uranus in a square as well. That's part of this new moon conversation. The public's got to take some responsibility. We do. We can talk about structures. We can talk about the way that the state has purposely tried to make us sick and ignorant through these various kind of policies, especially in Reagan and post Reagan, right? And that's all very true. There was a number of different things that came together. I've talked about this before on past shows that in the 80s and 90s came together to create and open up a vacuum in which conservative thought moved much more to the center. So centrist ideas ended up moving more to the right. And a lot of that is because of the breakdown of communities, the breakdown of institutions that did help the initial wave of us creating the rights to begin with in the 60s and 50s and 60s. So the Black church was a big one. I talked about this last week. The Black church was a very big one. Whether you believed in Christian God or not, that was a place of community, of organizing, of aid, right? Of being able to organize for a very long time. That bus boycott that folks love to bring up, that took a long time of action and planning, and a failed attempt the first time, and then the second time they were still ratted out, but everything was already in place and it was already so airtight. The city of Montgomery, those officials really couldn't do anything to stop it. Right? But they had to believe the reality that they were in and operate in and through it. There was no purity politic, because if you were trying to be pure in an impure society, then you're going to wind up fucking dead, y'all. Right? This is real. This is real life. So the state is not stupid, right? It's making us dumb, but the state is not stupid. It is good at what it does. So what did it do? It learned from those that pushed back against it and implemented those same methodologies through its lens. So then it took over the church with evangelicalism. It took over the church. Black church, they pumped that evangelical white money in the 70s and 80s. And the next thing you know, you got prosperity gospels coming down. You got churches all of a sudden turning folks round and round and telling them, no, baby, don't push back. Your blackness is not important. It is your Christianity. What sense does that fucking make? We got people saying this nonsense right now that they are saying they're going to praise Charlie Kirk because it is about them being Christian first over them being black. Baby, again, what sense does that make? Whose side are you using? And does that actually sit in the reality of your body when you walk into that white Christian space? And how exactly are you fully treated? Even if that whole space is black, where is the holding? Where is the love for you in your human form, in that blackness? That's just one example. We've seen this all over the place, right? Then we also see what happens when you do pump crack into a community, right? A lot of us who grew up in the 80s, we were impacted by crack. That was not some fucking conspiracy theory. That was a harsh reality. I lost my goddamn brother last year to drugs, right? Because we grew up in that shit. You grew up having, all of a sudden, folks who were cool are now cracked out. All of a sudden, community, like families, even the family was or were somewhat fucked up coming together. You can't, because you can't trust folks, right? You know how hard it is to realize you can't let a family member in your house because they will try to steal from you and then they will lie to your face. Do you know how hard that is? Do you know how hard that is? Right? You're choosing between shit and shit, and then the state's telling you it's your fault. The state's then taking back even more, because at the same time we have a high rise in addiction, they are then deinstitutionalizing everything. Reagan kicked folks out of them hospitals overnight. They were literally kicked out, right? So then on top of that, you then start to move education. Like I've said before, let's play detective, y'all. Bring these different things together. So then you reduce education, save the music, right? I was able to play an instrument because it was free. We could not afford that shit. I'm playing trombone. Like, I'm playing this shit, right? For a year because I was able to, because there was a music program, even in that Catholic school I went to. And then that got decimated, right? And then you see the focus on testing in lieu of the humanities, in lieu of the arts, right? In lieu of then social sciences, exactly. No Child Left Behind was benevolent and inverted. Absolutely. You know? And being a product of an education system that I left high school right around the time that No Child Left Behind was being implemented, when I then 10 years later started to teach in higher ed, I could literally see the difference in the students. It was night and day, y'all. Critical thinking just wasn't, they weren't used to critically engaging. It was all about, do I have the right answer? Do you want to be right or do you want to be fucking free? Because being right in a structure and system that tells you how to think, how to engage, how to have an opinion means that, yes, you will always be right, but you will be subjugated in that rightness. Virgo South Node, can we release that shit? But release into what though? A release into what? We got to release into our feet by grounding in the body. What does your body want and need, right? What does your body want and need? Because these structures don't like us. So at the same time, we then have education, we got crack, we got all of this. We get the rise of 24-hour news, 24/7 news cycle. We got to bring this into media, y'all, and pop culture. So then you also have talk shows, right? And I know this well. My mama, she was paranoid as shit working the county. So I had to keep my ass inside watching all her goddamn kids. If it wasn't school or an after school activity, I was at home babysitting these folks and then watching when she got cut from work because she worked night shifts, watching when I wasn't in school, all these daytime talk shows. I watched all of them, y'all. Sally, Ricky, Montel, Jerry before and during, Jerry before he was ridiculous, and then Jerry when he was ridiculous, Donahue. Shit, there's a bunch of other ones. I watched all those. Them and them core TV shows, them drama core, those were a mess. Those were a mess. Geraldo, yes. I remember watching Geraldo and this is where also there was no really filtering when the Oklahoma City bombings happened. I remember sitting in my room watching Geraldo and watching those things. I'm in 5th grade. Right, I'm watching Oklahoma. I remember watching as Geraldo got punched in the nose by a Klan member, right? Because the Klan was marching in Janesville. Janesville is the city right next to Beloit, where I did my first undergrad, excuse me, and then also where I worked. Right, the Klan never left; it just reincorporated itself. So we're growing up in the 80s and 90s, y'all. There's also a way I want us to remember growing up in the 80s and 90s. Racism was really blatant. I was talking with Forrest about this other day. We were talking about how, like, we grew up as kids, they were still lynching folks. Jasper, Texas happened. Where they took that black man, they put him behind a truck, and they dragged him. And then the same year, they had Matthew Shepard happen as well. They beat that boy. For just being gay. So racist lynchings, gay bashing, all of that shit was an everyday thing for me as a kid. And if you are in your 40s and 50s, right, you really should remember this. We've already been here before. We know what happens when a state comes in and turns conservative. It turns on its citizens, the margins first, right? Then you have a whole AIDS epidemic. You have AIDS, which is now lasting impact on the queer communities to this present day. So being able to show your body is healthy was the only way you would be treated as a human being, because they let them folks die. They let them folks die in those hospitals. And it was lesbian nurses and lesbians who came in to care for that sick. Right? We've been here before. I don't want to fucking go back. You know what I mean? Like there's like this kind of, and I'm fired up about it, y'all, because like I don't want to go back. And here we are. Right? Here we are. The shit is scary, but it also should be infuriating because it makes no goddamn sense. Because there is no sense in any of this. And I think this is what this new moon is really showing us, y'all. Where's the fucking sense in all of this? Because if not, then we are willingly giving it up to an incompetent authority figure. And the thing is, we don't believe who was hired, who was literally hired for the job. There's not a president up there, y'all. There's a businessman up there. There's the embodiment of a boomer. And when I say boomer, Pluto and Leo generation businessman up there. And he is the embodiment of all of the falls of those energies, right? A self-centered prick who's always wants to perform for the public, and the public eats it up. He's a reality star and a con man whose business practices are literally to get people to do work for him, and then he either doesn't pay or he strong arms them. and gets them to end up paying him, even though he's the one that's owed. What is he doing right now, y'all? What is he doing right now? Right? What is he doing right now? He's strong arming all the major institutions, starting with higher ed first. Right? Why? Because he knew they would bend the knee. And here come these Ivies, bent the goddamn knee, all in the name of academic freedom. And again, I need y'all to believe this, because they said that same shit the first Trump presidency when they allowed these folks to come on campuses and do these goddamn debates and talk with no actual foundation or grounding what they were talking about. And it wasn't just Charlie Kirk, it was Ann Coulter's old nasty ass, old hateful, ignorant ass. Right? But let a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman go up there and just say that she's just, saying a difference of opinion. And if we can't handle it, I'm not handling stupidity and something not grounded in any kind of reality. But when the institution of education that is supposed to be leading the nation in innovation, right, and intellect says that that is intellectual, then you got to believe that. I did. I started to believe that hard. It broke my heart. But even changing institutions, I was like, no, this is going to kill us. This is going to kill me personally. This is going to kill us all. It's going to kill us all because everyone's sitting in a goddamn theory. But the reality is this shit is you are converting people to this nonsense. Why? Because it's easier. It's easier. It's even if it's uncomfortable, y'all, it's still easier. If I can just believe that I'm superior because of my skin or because of my training, whatever it is, and that I don't have to think hard, well, shit, why don't I just believe in that? Why not? Right? Well, there's a consequence to that. But there is an embeddedness of giving up already. The public is showing in the fact that we don't want to believe that not only we've been here before, but we didn't learn a goddamn thing from that first time around. We thought he was playing a fucking game, and he's not. He was trying to figure out how to do it better. Why? Because he's a con man. He's a businessman and a con man, and he is good at what he does, y'all. He's good at keeping himself out of prison and making sure he always has access to somebody else's resources. He even said it himself. He was like, not very smart people, listen to me. He knows his population is built upon stupidity and he don't care. But do we believe? So even this whole thing with Disney right now, right, with them firing Jimmy Kimmel and people are now in an uproar. And that pisses me off too, y'all. Not even because we already had Joy Reid and Don Lemon have their careers cut for ridiculousness. We forgot the first Trump presidency when they did it to Melissa Harris Perry. They did it to Melissa Harris Perry. And then they tried to drag her name through the fucking mud talking about, well, because she's a bad person because she has tax issues. Are you fucking kidding me? And it was everyone talking about that woman like she was a dog because they were like, well, you made all this money. You couldn't do all this. And she was like, I'm supporting a whole fucking family. Like I'm trying to get us. Yeah. And I messed up, but that doesn't make me an awful person. Oh, deification. They're into damnation. This is why I tell folks, stop talking about Black women are going to save us when you can't even see us as Black women. You can't even see us as people, let alone this idea of Blackness and womanhood together in one damn body. Because we live in a racial capitalist society that only understands the Black woman's body as a site of reproduction and labor. So until you can come into your body and fully understand your humanity, you will never see it in one of us. This is why the public's pissing me off. And that's going to be my last part of the show and my full rant with that. Because we don't believe, right? We don't believe. And it is necropolitics, right? It is necropolitics. But even with that, I want us to not stop there. Right? I want us to push through that because they need us to buy into the fact that we think we are dead. They need us to believe we are dead when we're not. We're living. You have breath. If you are breathing, you are alive. So where is the life that needs to be lived in this vessel called the body? If not, then we are giving our authority up. We are giving an offering up to an entity that already told us it will suck us dry. It doesn't know satiation, right? What'll I do for some satisfaction? Do you know what satiates you? If not, then you will constantly be consuming. It will never be enough. Joy Reid in her show recently went on her own rant, and she literally said, "When is it enough, y'all, for the conservatives? Like you got everything you wanted. You got everything you wanted, and you're still not happy." And she talked about everything they rolled back, the targeting of different populations like trans folks and Black folks and immigrants and all this stuff, right? You took away education. You're literally putting in essentially DEI for white folks now, because I'm gonna tell you right now, they are going to start using all the programs that were for minoritized populations, like Obama's, My Brother's Keeper, and all of the various kind of affirmative action type of policies and procedures to help rectify the imbalance of the nation because of race and gender and class and all of that. They're going to reappropriate all that now and direct it toward white men, white folks, white families. I'm gonna tell you that right now. They are not innovative. They are literally just they all they know how to do is take and regurgitate. So don't be surprised when all of a sudden they're going to use the same language but justify it because they need to balance the scales once again because wokeness was too much. All right, does that make any sense? No. No. And it's not supposed to. They just need your blind allegiance. And folks will buy into it. Why? Because they think they will be part of that specialness now. Folks who felt like they weren't special before for whatever shape or form are now going to feel as if special, but they're never going to be, it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough. Right. And we're seeing this right now with people losing their goddamn minds going to Starbucks, asking for a certain drink. What is it? Tea with 2 honeys or something, and then putting Charlie Kirk's name and then getting upset when the bartender doesn't want to yell out Charlie Kirk. And even if they do yell it out, they make a big fucking deal about it and then throw a temper tantrum. Why? Because you will never be satisfied because your soul is gone, your soul is empty, and you don't know what to do with your body. So you're trying to feed it something that will never satiate it because your spirit has gone. You have now given yourself up to an entity that will take and take and take. And as you are spending all that money at Starbucks, be careful because around behind the scenes, your job might be on the fucking line at that point, but not because of what you politically did, but because Trump is ruining this economy. Right? Trump is ruining this economy on purpose because it's about consumption. But do we believe? And if we do, how do you take your offering back? This is also the energy now. This is why there's a tension. So let's talk about these squares. We have got Mars squaring Pluto. Now, Mars is going to be in Virgo at 29 degrees, right? It's 28, 29 degrees. So it's at a critical degree. It's at its wit's end, and Mars in Libra. Right? Mars in Libra is supposed to, that is what it's considered to be in fall. But I always say Mars in Libra is a calculating understanding of strategy. It will understand how to move that balance of the scales, right? It's a compromise and a collaboration, but it is understanding that war has to look differently. So we are now in a war of what? Libra things, justice, money, relationships. Squaring Pluto and Aquarius. What is the relationship we have to one another, to the collective, right? And what is the responsibility we're going to take to rewrite that balance of society? Because Pluto in Aquarius is retrograde right now. And there is a reflection and review we need to be doing as a society, as a collective, about how we have allowed this shit as well, in one way, shape, or form. And if we stop placing judgment and shame and actually analyze how we can understand the ways that we have bought into things that are killing us, well, then when Mars moves into Scorpio, it is still going to be at that tension. Then there's action we can take because Mars is going to be in the deep waters that it likes to be in, because Scorpio is the butcher. Scorpio is the researcher. Scorpio is the one that's not afraid to go into the taboo things and bring that shit to the light. So what needs to be brought into the light about you and your relationship to your own knowing and how that is in attention to the collective right now. So don't be surprised if you, for the next 2 weeks, they're going to be in this conversation, this square, and it's going to get direct on the 24th and 23rd, 24th, 25th. It's going to be directly in a 1 degree, but until Mars really leaves those first 10 degrees, we're going to be feeling this kind of tension between Pluto and Mars. So until October 1, y'all, I want you to really work with your anger and rage and ask yourself, what is it trying to tell you? I'm not going to be an astrologer to tell you not to speak. I'm not. I'm not going to be an astrologer to tell you to keep your head down and be docile. I'm not, because that's not what the astrology is saying. That's not what the astrology is saying. Not to me. The astrology is saying, baby, you're going to feel some shit. You're going to face some shit. And you're going to change some shit, whether we like it or not. So it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to hurt a bit. Not because we need the pain, but because we're already in pain. We just don't feel it. So what would it look like to actually feel your pain versus trying to drink it away, smoke it away, ignore it away, love and light it away, Christian it away, right? And so that is the reality that we are in right now. And there's going to be tension. Also because we got Venus that's in Virgo squaring Uranus in Gemini that is also retrograde. So if you've been reflecting, maybe the next couple of days, right, let me know what comes up and we can kind of engage with that as well. Because if we don't run away from our emotions, if we actually have it sit by the table and we start to talk with it, that's how we start to hear ourselves. This is a process, y'all. This is an actual process that allows you to call your spirit down, right? This is or rework. This is higher self work. You got to allow and make that space. So I work with astrology, and this is how I teach people how to work with it to give you some more clarity about the spaces that are breaking, right? About the spaces that are reevaluating. You're not crazy. This shit is crazy making. Right? And if this is sanity, like I say, then bitch, make me insane because this don't make no goddamn sense. And this is why I am doing a lot more on the Patreon. Without the Patreon, I would not have had anything coming in for a while because of everything that broke this summer and having to fight for and file grievances and having to believe spaces that were stringing me along, right? I really do mean that. I am very grateful for y'all. I'm very grateful for y'all for riding with me as I'm figuring out how I want to engage, right? How I want to teach, but also how I want to preach. There is a way that there's something awakening, and I appreciate y'all experimenting and playing with me as well. So if you're listening to this, thank you. If you're ever interested in different tiers, I do have different tiers. The higher tiers up you go is just more kind of community engagement, play, storytelling, and divination and stuff. Okay. And if you're a free level, I appreciate y'all too. I really do mean that. I'm pushing a lot more stuff on here. So if you're at the free level, there will still be stuff here because I'm not doing the TikToks and IGs like I used to. That will be more for promotion of stuff because I've got a couple of things coming up as well. Besides the pop-ups, I'll be doing my Queering Chaos conversations at Dorothy Downstairs starting next month in October, and I'll have more information about that next week, all right, as it's coming through. If you like the work, please consider joining at the 5-tier level and higher, because that's where you'll get access to all the episodes and more, okay? But I did want to say that. Thank y'all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I do appreciate it, and I hope you can continue to support. And if you can't do continuous support, because I do understand that, I do now have a tip jar. It's on my website. If you would like to tip, I would greatly appreciate it. The tips do just go back right into the work. Because again, I'm working on a Queering Chaos project that's going to lead to a documentary. But I've also got a couple of other things in the works that again that I'll be talking about over the coming weeks. Okay, so I think that's it, y'all. So happy new moon. All right. Get in the body, allow the body to do what it needs to do. All right. And as always, keep dreaming, keep exploring, because it is through the dreamscapes that we can bring the futures that we want to bring into the present. All right. Till next time. I get why I'm angry now. I betrayed myself. Let others' opinions of me dominate my sense of self. Allowed myself to wallow in a pool of regret mixed with loneliness that remained stagnant. Had folks in my home who turned it into theirs, then seemed annoyed I was still there. I get why I'm angry now. I betrayed myself. Allowed trauma I had repressed to turn into an armor. I became my own mask to protect the femme and child within me. Therapist had me fucked up when she said through that Zoom screen,
your feet to the fire, you won't let go. You're screaming for water, but you won't let go. It keeps getting harder, you won't let go. The danger don't matter, 'cause you won't be inside. Now you won't let go. 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 La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la.
fire came next and burned up and out of me for the next 3 years. Allowed folks to tell me who I was as they took more and more. All in the name of love till that love turned cold. Where there was once joy, now only a void. Wanting to go, the monster steady knocking at the door of my heart. Not seeing a heart, but a light to draw from. Till there was no more.
Run, run, run away. Far, far, far away. Wherever you go, there you are with the bag you're carrying. Run, run, run away. Far, far, far away. Wherever you go, there you are with the bag you're carrying. You live with the pain, you won't let it go. Yeah, waiting on the world to change. You won't let it go. It all stays the same, you won't let it go. It's certainly strange. 'Cause you won't let go. Now 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 you won't let go. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la.
I get why I was angry, as now that cup is running over. From love of life, from people who shine so bright. Such warmth and delight upon us seeing one another's light. That cut through the heat of self-flagellation. A warmth that tamed the fire within, which kept me in a tailspin of past grievances. Rumination over what could have been. What I did wrong. Why I was wronged. Why I was wrong. No way out until arms wrap themselves around me. You ain't gotta do this by yourself, baby. Love, true love had entered. My child and femme felt safe. They are out and learning to play. I get why I was angry. All that anger was my protection from hard realities that I had transmuted into other fantasies. Then the fantasies became reality. A veil of self-delusion that eventually cracked and broke me wide open. The anger had to come out. Like melodies from heaven, it rained down on me, molten lava, melting away the layers that had built up over 4 decades, till it was just me. Finally. I know why I was angry, and the anger served its purpose. Showed me how I betrayed myself to be of service to others who could not see themselves without my light, until that perfection burned a little too bright. Now, let's see what leading with sweetness feels like.